Great powers do not fall only when enemies break through the gates. They also fall when those gates are quietly rented out, one investment at a time. And we say that China's first duty, if it wants to help its own technological future, is to decide which doors cannot be opened casually. Especially when these are the same people that blocks you out within their own AI trades, i.e., the US already treats their access to its own technology as something to be controlled, weaponized, and denied. They can easily look into your growing crucial industries, identify their vulnerabilities, and weaponize that to discredit, restrict, and weaken them in the international ground. They have already done this with Huawei, where Chinese technological growth was framed as a security threat because of those reports from their investors. So it's more likely that they will do the same to the same emerging Chinese firms right now. But if these firms are screened and protected early on, there's less exposure, less vulnerability, and less reason for the US to justify sanctions against them, which MNCs are forced to follow in both sides of the house. First, few points of clarification before anything else. First, this is worse than ordinary venture capital because these are no longer just early startups looking for money. No, let's be real. Chinese doesn't need these investments as much as opposition wants us to think, unlike those previous venture capitals that they had back then in other industries. That's why the situation right now is different, because China and the US are not just trading with each other. They're directly competing who gets to control the future of AI, which is still speculative right now. China's tech sector is not helpless without the US money. It already has this domestic capital, state-backed funds, and a massive consumer market, wherein you also have non-US partners right now, which are prevalent because, again, the AI industry doesn't revolve around the US, or more likely to get fucked by their own economical AI bubble that is about to burst. That's why you need to build an independent economy on this worst case. So even if some investors leaves in our side, that is accessible because the ones that are scared of are likely those who want to get easy access and unchecked access. So if the capital is genuinely passive and useful, you can still enter through approval in our side. So I'm not quite sure what's their LO's case here. So second, this happens through screening conditions and negotiation. It's not a blanket blacklist of American capital. The policy only means that when US enters crucial industry, China gets to decide what access, influence, and exposure comes with it. Especially right now, they have created China shedding to prevent the abuses that we had back then within their other crucial industries. And more on this later. So even if the US ease up some restrictions right now, that just proves our point. Like, American tech policy is unstable, political, and reversible depending on who is in power, and China cannot let its crucial firms depend on a system that can open the gate today, close it tomorrow, and just call it national security whenever Chinese firms becomes too competitive. First extension, why does the US capital create an exit pathway for Chinese technology? The first reason why China should restrict top technology firms from accepting US capital is because American capital doesn't just merely fund US innovation, just like what we have talked about. It also gives Chinese firms a pathway to detach from the Chinese ecosystem that created them. These firms are not just valuable in vacuum, they become valuable because of Chinese engineers, Chinese data, Chinese consumers, and Chinese state infrastructure. So all of those years of domestic industrial support. So when US investors enters at the point where the firm is already strategically valuable, what happens is they're positioning themselves to capture the upside of an economic system that China helped build. So this happens because venture capital always comes with direction. Like, a US investor doesn't just say that, here's the money, do whatever you want, make it grow. They create pressure for the firm to become globally legible and more attractive to American markets where their interest relies. So that means restructuring ownership, distancing Chinese state links, and shifting operations abroad are more likely going to happen if you keep on doing this. That's why we currently have the dilemma of China shedding to answer that. This means that they avoid themselves from their roots to avoid Western scrutiny, regulatory risk, and reputational damage. So the US does this because it increasingly treats Chinese ties as security risk when it comes to innovation in technology, not just a business detail or applicable in any other industry. So Chinese firms are pushed to dilute, hide, and restructure those ties just to remain acceptable to Western regulators and markets that are already regulating right now, already functioning in the US, even if they don't want Trump, for example. The danger is not just like firm leaves the US, China overnight. The danger is that every funding round makes leaving more normal, more profitable, and more institutionally possible. That's why a non-regulation is actually what makes exit more likely, because without state approval, firms can slowly become dependent on US capital for valuation in AI, and exit opportunities will come further in their side. So once that dependence is built, China can no longer easily tell the firm to stay aligned with national priorities because China's future is already tied to American investor expectation. That's why government approval cuts those pipeline earlies. It tells the firms that if they want to grow, they must do it in a way that doesn't convert Chinese innovation into a foreign controlled asset within their own control and initiative. This is going to work because these Chinese firms cannot just leave. They're currently frowned upon in the US. That's why, as much as possible as the actor, we need to use that as a leverage because they're still heavily reliant on Chinese economy and talents anyways. But for that, I'll take a PY. PY? All right, I'll move to my second reason then. So this comparatively better because opposition treats capital as neutral when in reality it is not. On their side, private firms decide whether national technology should be exposed to foreign leverage. I want to note that this isn't just any other industry. This is a crucial industry for you that will decide your future in the upcoming bubble that you will have. So on the comparative, China just doesn't ban all of the investment. It simply asks whether this specific capital strengthens Chinese technological development or creates bridge for your own strategic extraction. Second reason for this folly is that the US gives foreign actors a clean, legal, and ordinarily looking way to see inside China's most important technological firms. So in the frontier technology, the sensitive asset is not just your finished product like DeepSeek, for example. It is the roadmap, like what models they're training, what chips they need, where their technological bottlenecks are, or which engineers are indispensable right now. So that kind of information is already a power for your crucial industry that you're building. Note, I'm not quite sure why in every US investor doesn't have that American tie with them, even if they don't like Trump. Of course, they will still prioritize their own market because that's where their main firms lie. So I'm not quite sure why they're going to be benevolent in both sides of the house. But even if they are, most likely it is in our side where we secure who are those benevolent. We screen them better and we allow those prosperous relationship to actually grow rather than blindly letting them in without, screening them, and then suddenly you're going to be fucked. So those things may look like normal venture capital practice outside of this nuance, but inside AI, semiconductors, quantum, and cloud infrastructure, they become a window into Chinese strategic capacity. So this is really important because the US is not just entering into this sector as a neutral source of money, it is actively competing to slow down China's technological rise due to their proxy competition, and because of the current AI bubble burst, they're more likely to do so in order for them to prevent their competitors from fucking them off. So very proud to propose.